In my last video, I talked about some of the reasons I choose to live in Ecuador. I talked about the low cost of living and the beautiful landscapes. What I didn't talk about was community, my neighbors, one of the other reasons I choose to live here. My 80-year-old neighbor, the man you just saw walking off with his horse, just stopped by and gave me a bunch of corn. He didn't want anything, he just wanted to share, to be friendly. And that is how things work out here. This isn't true of all of Ecuador, but it is true of this part. I happen to know that my neighbor has a leaky roof, and I just happen to have a bunch of extra roofing panels. So I offered them to him as a thank you for the corn. I think we'll call this video Why Ecuador, Part 2. Community, a sense of community, and the incredibly kind, generous, helpful, just beautiful nature of the people is one of the other reasons that I choose to stay in Ecuador. It's part of what brought me here in the beginning, and it's part of why I don't want to leave. Now, this is not true of all of Ecuador. I have lived in some parts of Ecuador while I was figuring the country out and trying to decide where my forever home would be. I've lived in some parts of Ecuador that were not kind and welcoming. People might be friendly at first, but it very quickly becomes apparent that the culture of that particular community sees a gringo as a resource and will eventually just attempt to exploit that resource. But if you are very careful about where you choose in Ecuador, then you can find a community like I have found here. You can find a place where the community is very close-knit. They don't care that you're a gringo, a foreigner. They're welcoming, and they don't try to exploit you. They're curious about you. They're friendly, and in many ways, they're protective. My particular community, the feeling I get is they think of me as their gringo, right? And they want to make sure that nobody else takes advantage of me and that I'm safe out here. I think they take pride in making sure that their community is safe and inclusive. I don't know that they really think about it that way. I think it's just their nature. I think they can't help it. It's who they are. So in my community, let me start again. So how do you find a community like this? You don't move quickly. Ecuador moves slow, and they do things in old-fashioned ways. So if you are considering moving to Ecuador, or really anywhere in Latin America, don't swing by on a 2-week vacation, scout out real estate, and buy something. Don't do that. That's a huge mistake. I have made the mistake before of buying property before I fully researched the area, the community, and I regretted it. So the best advice I think anyone can get on moving to a place like Ecuador, or if not Ecuador, Colombia or Argentina, or really anywhere overseas, is don't just jump in head first. Take your time. In this community, like I rolled through this community, through the neighboring towns, the closest towns, and the first thing I noticed is, unlike a lot of other parts of Ecuador, there wasn't trash all over the streets, that the town was clean. And I thought, that's different. And then I noticed the street dogs. Now there's a lot of street dogs in the neighboring towns, and there's a lot of sort of half wild dogs. They have owners, but they live outside and they fend for themselves. I noticed all these dogs weren't aggressive. These dogs were sometimes too friendly. I've had times where a dog just would adopt me. And I didn't really want a dog. I wasn't ready to own a dog. So what that told me was the people here were not abusing the dogs. That happens in a lot of parts of Ecuador. Here, it doesn't seem to happen. This community is different. So that kind of put me on to investigating this little community more. And what I did was I rented in the neighboring town for about a year. I rented for about a year to scope it out, get the lay of the land, and understand what it was that made this community different and whether this is where I wanted to buy land. So I did my research. I took my time, and I did things the slow way. It is really, really, really hard when you are from some place like America where things happen quickly and you want efficiency and you want to get things done, to not, we're trained that good deals go quickly, and that when you see something that's a good price, you just got to snap it up, right? Especially with real estate. Don't do that here. Don't do that. The best deals are not online, and the only right way to do things here is nice and slow. Do your research. Understand, really, really understand the community before you think about buying. As much as possible, understand the community, do your research before you even rent. And not just research online that doesn't tell you anything. I mean, visit over and over again. Check it out at different times of day, different times of the week. Visit on Saturday night. Are there crazy parties? Visit Sunday morning. Is everyone hungover? Visit in the middle of the week. Are the kids in school? Are they out on the street? Visit over and over and over again. Visit in different seasons to understand the climate in different seasons. So that's not what this video is supposed to be about. How did I do that? I'm talking about real estate. I'm talking about real estate and scouting out real estate because it's something I'm interested in and I love. But no, this video is about community, and it is about understanding what it is that makes Ecuador special. What is different about the Ecuadorian people that I love so much? So this is a community-oriented culture. People take care of each other. And this is, in many places, many parts of Ecuador, it's a place that feels a little lost in time. It feels like there's almost like a 1950s America sense of community in a lot of parts of Ecuador. I know that means different things to different people, but in the best possible sense, in the sense that, neighbors care for each other here. These roof panels that are sitting in front of me. So the other day, a neighbor came by and she asked if she could have 2 of them. And I was like, hey, yeah, take 2. You want more? Take 4. I gave her 4 of these roof panels that I'm not using. And she was very grateful. She wanted to pay me for them, but I didn't want her money. And what I got in return, something really she was already doing, but maybe now a little more committed to it because she recognizes that it is very beneficial for her to have me here. She will come water my plants when I'm not here. And she keeps an eye out on my house, makes sure, this place doesn't get robbed when I'm not here. And that kind of behavior, that's something I think a lot of, this grass is blowing on the camera. I think it's something a lot of expats miss when they move to Ecuador. They don't understand the importance of integrating into that community and behaving in the same way that the folks that are already here are used to and expect, which is everyone helps each other. Everyone helps each other out and looks out for each other. And if you don't adapt to that and practice those same behaviors yourself, then yeah, you might end up with problems with your neighbors. One of my last videos, somebody pointed out, they reminded me of the case of the 2 American brothers, a couple guys that were living, I want to say it was Pastaza province. It's the province just south of Napo, over on the Amazon side. It's a very rural, very indigenous area, a lot of indigenous communities out there. And as I said before, there are good communities and there are bad communities. There are parts of Ecuador where you don't want to live. Well, these 2 brothers invested in a nice property out there. They had a big, I don't know if it was a farm or a hotel or whatever they were building out there. They're working on this project, developing it. And it sounds like a neighboring indigenous community was not one of the good communities, and that they had a problem. There were a lot of murders. Sounded kind of like familiar murders. They, killing family members and things like that on that community. And they also were jealous of these 2 Americans that were living out there, and they buried the couple bodies on their property. And then they called the police and said these guys were dealing drugs to get a raid on the property. And while the police were out there, the indigenous group came back out and dug up the bodies they themselves had buried out there. So they framed them, they set them up, and because the legal system in Ecuador is fairly broken. These guys spent 7 years in jail before they were able to I think prove their innocence and get out. But so that is what happens if you don't research your community enough. And not that is what happens, but that is what could happen. That is a worst case scenario of the types of problems you could have out here. And that is also what happens if you don't get along with your neighbors. Now, they probably were in a terrible situation where they had an absolutely horrible family or group living near them that, if they're killing their own family members, they're not going to be people that you can reason with and get along with. But if you do your research and you find a good community, then don't blow that opportunity. Integrate into that community and treat the neighbors the same way they treat you. Treat them with kindness and generosity, and almost like an extension of your family, so that they will take care of you and keep you safe out here. And not everyone is able to do that. Not all expats are able to break their conditioning from where they grew up and behave like that. Some would say it's kind of un-American. It's foreign to us. We like our big yard and our fence and our privacy, and we don't necessarily want to have those sort of relationships with our neighbors. We are individualistic, not socialistic, right? Ecuador is not a socialist country by any means, but there are some aspects of that community nature that lean in that direction, that feeling of responsibility for each other and desire to make sure everyone is taken care of. And for that reason, if you are not able to adapt to that kind of an environment, then Ecuador might not be for you. There may be some other place where that American individualism is more appreciated, more emphasized, and you fit in better. But if you are adaptable to that reality, to not government socialism, but just that tendency in the culture to behave in that manner, then yeah, this might be the place for you. It might be. What else do I have to say? I end these videos, always when I end a video, I'm like, oh, there were 5 other points that I didn't talk about. I don't script my videos. You can probably tell. I just stream of consciousness. I just talk. I'm sure there is a lot more to say, but I don't know what it is right now. So I guess it's a good time to check out.